following podcast may be explicit. One Joe Young presents Adventures from the Shed, a tabletop RPG podcast. You can find us online at adventuresfromtheshed.com.
Hi, and here we are in the shed for Adventures from the Shed. I'm going to press this button here so you can see us. Hi! You're out there on YouTube. We are here in the shed. You can find us, like I said, adventuresfromtheshed.com. Also on iTunes and Facebook and other places. We're on Spotify. We're on Stitcher Radio. Actually, I just looked this up the other day. I'm going to get us into iHeartRadio as well. So by the time you hear this, the next time you hear it might be through a different service as well. We're throwing up all over the internet. That's what we're doing here. So we're back in the shed. We're going to continue our Trail of Cthulhu adventure called The Keepers of the Woods. I'm just looking to make sure I spelled it right. Looks like I did. I misspelled everything else as I was putting this up, so I had to double check. We're going to go around the table here and say hi. We'll start with that important guy over there who is...
Hey everyone, this is Kurt. I am playing the Keeper, which is the game master for this Trail of Cthulhu adventure, The Keepers of the Woods.
And after him is this guy.
Oh, hey, it's Chris. I'm playing.
Chris, is your mic muted?
Oh, probably is. There's a red light on it. It's
there
amazing
it goes.
how it works.
See, now I
figured I could pull off a Kurt early, and then we'll see how it goes.
Oh, snap.
This is Chris, as I said earlier, and I'm playing Howlow, kind of like the adventure dilettante kind of person. They're getting into the archaeology thing, so they're kind of into the weird occult stuff now. So
weird. Speaking of the weird occult stuff.
Oh, hi. It's Verge.
Hi.
I'm playing Terrence Cruz. We welcome you.
Terrence welcomes you. He was Terrence earlier till I went and fixed it.
I was Typo Cruz there.
I am Typo Cruz. I am Joe. I'm playing Sherman Rawlings, who, it's been a little while since I looked at this. My character is a criminal. Apparently. Great.
He's an underground.
You're a sketchy book dealer, as I recall.
Yeah, well, that's the part that makes him a criminal, I guess. Because he's just sketchy. Kurt, it's been a while.
Yeah, let's do a quick recap.
Let's do that.
Awesome. So it has been a little while since we've gotten together. You guys may recall that you are playing members of the Miscellany Society, which was a group.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's a group in London of people who are drawn together by an interest in history, legends, and or the occult. And you all were each fairly close to Professor Margaret Blackwood, who was a prominent speaker at the Society, and from whom you each received a letter summoning you to the village of Postbridge in the Dartmoor area of England. This is out in the moors, 6 or 7 hour drive away from London. You all set out the next day after receiving her letter together on a cold, brisk morning, and as you recall, the weather got nastier and nastier.
Yeah. Do we have that map of the town?
We do.
I was curious. It's something I would put up while we're talking, but...
there is Postbridge proper.
Go ahead and continue. This is actually MapCam then.
And we're just doing a quick recap from the beginning, largely for our own edification. Yeah. But y'all worked your way out there driving, and you'll recall it's, I think, 1935, so pretty far in the past for us as players, but between the wars here, you guys arrived in Postbridge, which is a very small town in Dartmoor, like I said, and you, I believe, started at the Thistle Lodge, which was kind of a bed and breakfast, essentially, right as you came into town.
Miss Hannah Blacknam.
Exactly, that's where you met Hannah Blacknam, who, along with her husband James, runs the lodge. James was not at home, but there was kind of evidence of his coat and boots and things, and she spoke about him. Basically, and I may be going a little bit out of order here, but you all learned that that actually Professor had died in a car crash. Yeah. You weren't sure the details of that, but as you kind of started to investigate, I think you didn't find anything particularly interesting in her room, but you found. You ended up talking to William MacArthur, who is kind of the town drunk, who knows more about the local history and legends than anyone. And he spoke to you about, he was very reluctant, but spoke to you about a number of things, including these kind of demonic yeth hounds that he insists he has seen, as well as Old Crockern, which is kind of a horned man legend that he had spoken about. Let's see, what else did we do? We
Went to the church.
We did go to the church.
Yep.
Found or looked at the priest's journal that had some references to some not so good stuff in it.
Right, so with respect to the church, a couple of things. You had seen someone leave it, they had been watching you at the bar, and this was the East Dart Inn, which is like the local tavern, had left and actually walked up towards the direction of the church. So you thought maybe he was going that way or giving notice. But more importantly, during a second conversation with Hannah, you would learn that she had concerns about Father Blakely, who is the priest in charge of the local church. And again, jumping out of order here, but she actually ultimately told you that she believed her husband was involved with a cult that Father Blakely was the leader of, who does something for the good of the town, but she's worried about what that means for the town and for her husband. I think towards the end of last episode, you all headed towards Princeton or Princetown, which is the larger town a couple miles away from Post Bridge. While you were heading there, you actually had a car. Chris, you were driving. Your character was driving. He's a skilled driver, but still had something yank at the wheels. You had heard about this legend of hairy hands, which implied that maybe there was a spirit in this area that was affected drivers because there had been a number of crashes. But it turns out that you guys realized that the road is just kind of cantered in a way that it was probably that had.
No, also at the church we found the Testamentum Vigilum.
Yeah, so at the church you guys found a bunch of stuff, but that's right, you found kind of an ancient text or an old text that had been rebound many times in leather. And you guys spent a lot of time studying it, actually.
Yeah.
And I think you essentially were able to use some points and learn. There was a spell in there that you guys learned, I think, right?
Call or dismiss the horn man.
Right.
Yes.
Call or dismiss horn man. That's right. So that was important.
And obviously the professor's journal, which was pretty shady for the father to have.
Exactly. So the Professor Blackwood's journal was in the church, in the sacristy, which was unusual, and had some rather revealing information about what she was discovering from the locals.
Oh, yeah.
And she had actually spoken with James, Hannah's husband, and it was James in a lot of ways that kind of started her on the path that she was investigating. It sounded like maybe he had had a little too much to drink and had been a little loose-lipped with her. And so she was looking into things that perhaps some of the locals might not have wanted her to be looking into. So. I think at the end of last session, you guys had gone to Princetown, you'd gone to the police station, had undertaken some cop talk and some reassurance with Detective Donnelly there, and had a look at the belongings that the professor had that they took in at her death, as well as gotten some information about the crash site. And then the two leads, I think, that came out of that session essentially were that she had a library card, was one of the things, the Princetown library card, and also that Dr. Winter had her body at the Dartmoor prison, which also served as the local morgue where the autopsy had been performed or was performed.
Yeah, Donnelly said he was going to give us a writ to get in there to investigate.
Yeah, essentially a letter of introduction from him, giving you credentials in order to enter the prison. So I'm sure we missed some things that happened along the way, but I think we hit the high points there. And just as a really brief reminder, you guys have kind of two types of skills. You've got the investigative skills where you're always going to find a clue. If you want to spend points from your investigation pool, in certain cases you may be able to get additional information or flavor, but you'll always get what's necessary to move to the next scene. And then if you get into any contests, you have your general skills where you may have to roll against someone else or against a difficulty class, and you can use those points to essentially add to your D6 roll to increase the chances of you being more successful. Is this all ringing bells with everyone?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
No, I'm just remembering, too, that also, a lot of those roles will link to stability and sanity as well. You can spend points on certain things. And anyway, yeah, what you said.
Right. And since we're playing, a Cthulhu horror game, at the end of the day, you've got these two pools. Stability is like your short-term measure of how you're dealing with the situation, and sanity is your grip on reality, and sanity never comes back, essentially. Whereas stability could get refreshed after this adventure is over. You could recover and then essentially get your stability back up and be able to go off on another adventure. But the more and more shocks you take to your sanity, the closer and closer you come to realizing the blackness at the center of the universe in which we all live. So
That Sounds a lot like home life, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's all good in the hood.
Oh, it is.
So why don't we jump right in? I think we ended last time, had wrapped up at the police station. And I believe you guys were wanting to go to the morgue, but you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, morgue.
Okay.
Or before the body ends up missing.
All right.
Because that will surely happen.
And I'm trying to remember, did we investigate the crash site in detail?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because we almost crashed in the same spot.
Right, that's what I thought.
And we had learned that really the problem there was, other than how having hairy hands, we learned that it's really the road, like you mentioned.
Yeah,
the
the
road
road.
was
We found
off.
shredded pieces of tire.
Yeah.
And
Right.
just the road was really uneven.
Right. Okay. Cool. Awesome. So the prison, Dartmoor Prison, actually sits in a pretty isolated part of town, overlooking Princetown. I'm going to call it Princetown. If it's Princeton, I apologize. So it sits up essentially on a hill looking down on town. And by the way, I think, not that it's particularly important, but I do have a
We like maps.
Princetown map that I can give you.
All right.
Yeah. So,
Here.
and you guys may be able to look at this.
Hold that right up in front of you, and it'll be closer on the screen. There you go.
Yeah, probably can't really see it on the screen, but you guys were at the police station kind of right here along the main street. There's a hotel, but here's the library, and then more importantly, there's this huge prison complex kind of up looking down on town from the northern end. So as y'all approach, you can see that the buildings of the prison are constructed of really solid granite blocks. It makes for a completely austere, kind of grim, severe structure that really sticks out from the surroundings. This is not a pleasant-looking, prison nestled among oaks in with lovely gardens.
No, I'm just curious. Complete interruption for a moment. Was that the way it was written? Because I like the phonetics of austere, grim, severe.
I made up severe.
All right, because I like the way that sounded.
It had
Go
grim,
ahead.
austere, and oppressive. So.
Oh, all right, good enough.
But you would all actually know this prison, even though this is a relatively small town by reputation, because it's known as kind of one of the hardest prisons in England at the time. As you guys come up to the main entryway, you guys are met by two prison guards that come out together to meet you, and they stop you and inquire about what it is that you're looking for at the prison.
I'm pretty sure we had determined that I wasn't the front man.
Yeah, he's gonna
All right,
show him the letter of introduction.
Yeah.
So he's going to show him the letter. I'm going to say, we're here to see the body of Professor Blackwood. She was a friend and colleague of ours. We have permission from Detective Donnelly.
Make it so.
And you show them the letter from Donnelly. Okay, so they take a look at it, and it doesn't take them long at all to realize that you're there with his blessing, and they guide you into the prison and down just really stark hallways. So there's nothing ornamental at all about the prison. It's bleak. As you get into the building, you can actually hear the yells and the clanging of pots on the doors as prisoners realize that you're there. And some of them are literally, they obviously are trying to get your attention, but there are others that are just shrieking and howling as if they're in their own worlds of insanity.
So it's a cacophony of banging metal and screaming.
Yeah, it's a lovely place. So you can hear them yelling and cursing.
Music.
Yeah, yelling and cursing as you walk by. At some point, you're following the guards, and they actually start down stairways, and you can tell that you're descending underground. And then, as you go underground, you pass a couple of doors that are closed, and then eventually come to the end, which is an open room where they ask you to wait for Dr. Winter. The room that you're in is completely tiled in white. It's actually quite bright white, even though it's austere and not ornamented. And there's a large kind of porcelain trough sink in the corner. You can see everything is very, very clean in here. You can see two glistening tables. One is empty with nothing on it, and the other one has a body that may or may not be the professor's body on it. While you're waiting, it only takes just a moment, and they walk away, and then they come back, and Dr. Winter walks into the room. He's got a lab coat on, kind of like you would expect. He's a fairly good-looking gentleman, wiry. He's got clear spectacles, Looks a little bit bookish, but a pretty good-looking gentleman. But he's pasty white, probably because he spends most of his time in here. And he says, welcome.
Why isn't there ever a well-tanned mortician?
Well, especially in England, it's probably not the case. He says,
Do you really trust one?
Gentlemen, I understand that Detective Donnelly sent you. What can I do to be of service?
We're here to inspect the body of Professor Blackwood. We are friends and colleagues of the professor's, and we are very troubled at hearing that she passed and how she passed.
Obviously I didn't know her, but it does appear to have been unfortunate circumstances. Interesting, quite interesting. At this point, as I said, the room is white and very clean, but it does not have a lot of natural light. There's really just kind of one small window that's letting in clear light. Everything else is artificial in the room. You smell, even inside, there's like this smell of dampness and moss in the air, at least to you. And all of a sudden you all start to hear a sound like a rattling of branches in the wind. And as you're listening to it, the wind starts to get this rattling sound. And you guys are underground and well inside of this building. It starts to get louder and louder. And it does not take long, maybe 15 seconds, and that it starts to sound almost like a hurricane outside, and then turns into a piercing howl.
Didn't we hear a howl a couple of nights ago?
Yeah, the sounds.
And there was like
whenever we were in the bar,
blizzardy conditions and
Arthur,
stuff too.
Or MacArthur.
Yeah, and just
is it like that?
It is. It sounds like a huge dog or a wolf or something like that. And so you all hear like this, and you know that this is out of place. And
What is Dr. Winter? What is he doing?
He was just had just entered and literally just started talking to you as the sound.
But how's he
started.
reacting to what's going on, or does he not hear?
You don't see any noticeable reaction. So, so as you hear it, you guys, I need you to make a 2-point stability check.
Oh my!
Of course.
So this would be against a roll of, you need a 4 or better.
All right.
All right.
Go ahead and
Let's
do this.
see.
Are we allowed to use points, or does it matter? I
Yep,
guess.
you can
I'll
always
that one,
add
right.
points.
Then I'm burning points. I don't want to do that. So.
And this is stability.
The stability down here.
Yeah. Well, unless you're marking it up here, I was keeping track of mine up on that little chart there. All right.
Yeah. 4.
4.
All right.
Now this is. You said the goal is a 4, or the success is
5.
a 4. There's no way I'm rolling that. So I'm going to use I'm going to use 1 point because I feel like I'm going to roll a 3. Let's see what happens.
So you can add 1 to your roll.
Holy crap! Look at that.
All right.
Prophecy true.
So that puts me down to 6 stability, but
So you burned 1.
That's better than the 2 I would have lost.
Exactly. All right, so all of you have heard over the course of 15 or 20 seconds, like I said, it was you all got this, all of a sudden, the smell of dampness and moss, and then woods, and going up to a howl, but you didn't notice any reaction at all from Dr. Winters. It was as if he didn't hear it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Something's onto us.
Yeah, that seems bad.
Doctor, you said that there was something interesting about her or curious.
Well, he says, since you have these credentials from the detective, I'm happy to share the post-mortem report with you. I have to admit it was done fairly quickly given the circumstances, not as professional as I might like, but I'll give this to you to start with. And then
Why was it done quickly and not to your liking?
I've printed it in black and white for you.
Well, it's just it just hasn't been that long since to conduct a full autopsy. I need more time for it to be a full report.
Interesting. So Verge gets to read it.
The police and the police asked for it to be done as quickly as
I
possible.
like the idea that somebody looks at it and then they.
Is it normal for somebody that's out of town?
What's on it?
Is that why they do that?
I think that they were concerned. Yeah, concerned about.
Well, I mean, if they're talking.
A bigwig from London, perhaps someone important. They wanted to get information as quickly as possible.
What do we got there? Turns.
Terrariums.
Oh.
It's like terrarium.
It says that there were multiple incisions across the body, particularly to the hands and face. Now, you deduced that these were likely from going through the windshield. Let's see. There was a major incision to the carotid and jugular, also probably from going through the windshield, with fragments of black glass in the wound. Were there any black glass in the vehicle?
Like obsidian?
Right. So
No, we didn't see any of that on the crash
No,
site.
just continue. We'll go back.
It says the right ulna was fractured but doesn't protrude. And there was a severe blow to the cranium. So there was a fracture to her head, and it says fracture and displacement of the left mandible, so her jaw. Oh, and the contusions are present on the wrist and also the face. So for that one, that would have been.
These protective kind of, somebody trying to protect themselves kind of thing?
So, I'm not a police officer, but it's my opinion that she did not die in this car accident. I think the wound,
It's backwards.
you look like a man who knows his way around a police report.
Cadaver.
Verge, does Terry have any forensics or medicine points or anything along that line?
He's got one forensics.
Okay.
Just trying to. Yeah, I really like this handout, so I was just trying to hold it up there for a second.
Yeah.
It's kind of neat.
So, and I don't have the handout in front of me, but Dr. Winters would tell you, he'd say, my estimation, and as I said, the police asked for a prompt report on this. I would like a little more time to write it up in a nicer manner for you, but I believe that she bled to death from the laceration on her neck, and that laceration is deeper and more serious than the cuts that appear to have come from the glass in the windshield.
And that's with the black glass, right? The laceration on the neck.
Correct.
Yes.
Were you able to identify what material that was?
Since I have not yet been able to identify for certain, do any of you have geology?
I do. I have chemistry as well and geology.
Okay, so in working
I
with...
have accounting.
And he's back.
So he says, I can show those to you afterwards, and you might be able to help me with that, but it's not a material that I would expect to have been found in her automobile.
Understood.
So,
What else we got, Terrence?
additionally,
Honestly, it seems most likely that her throat was cut, her
After she left the vehicle.
wrists were bound,
exactly, young man.
and that the vehicle was sent through the road to crash, and that's when she went through.
Or possibly crashed. Somebody captures her, binds her, slices throat, unbinds her. Hey, oh, she went through the windshield. Look at that.
Huh.
That's possible too.
That seems a bit much.
Morbid, although we are in the mortuary. But yeah, I mean,
The wounds on the wrist certainly seem consistent with binding. Like I said, she's clearly bled to death from the wound in the neck.
You said contusions, also the face. Where around the face?
Yeah, can you see those?
No, it doesn't say it on here.
he has sloppy writing.
Right. I think
Vegetable matter found
You say vegetable matter?
beneath fingernails. Vegetable matter.
Vegetable matter. So she was scratching at a
Okay.
plant.
so. At this point, I mean, you're not going to get any more from him probably without looking at the body, which you might have to
Oh, yeah,
convince
there's
him
a
to let
body
you
there.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd really.
So-
I'm going to ask him if he needs someone to do his taxes.
That'd be a good time for that flattery.
I've got that covered.
I do still have reassurance and intimidation.
I was gonna say,
and bargain for that matter. But
I've got one intimidation.
I don't know what the
I have flattery.
He doesn't seem, to me at least, he doesn't seem like he needs to be intimidated. He probably just needs to be asked in a nice way.
Yeah.
I think that's
Flattery.
right. I think that's right. One point in any of those will probably.
Yeah, I'd like to help you write up a better report for this. Any help we could provide, but we probably would need to see the body to help you out a little bit better.
Well, I'm certainly happy to work with you, gentlemen. I don't have anything else that I have to work on today, and I've got a bit of time. It's certainly cold enough out there. I'd like to stay inside while
Want
possible.
me to burn up a flattery point then?
Sure.
For that?
So he takes you over to the second table. I had mentioned. And by the way, the lights in here, they're kind of cathode, old lights,
yeah,
and they're kind of flickering on and off. It's kind of a little bit, it goes from really bright to different, and then comes back bright.
Is that normal
every now
for
and
this
then?
building?
And he says, from time to time. So he shows you the body. Are you all looking? Are you all there?
I'm definitely.
I think I'd be a little creeped out, so I'm gonna stand back.
I've got the evidence collection in forensics, so I'm definitely over there checking it out.
I'm gonna go with a weak stomach and stand back.
Okay. So, not you, but the two of you who are up there, Professor Blackwood's body is almost unrecognizable. She's had really horrific injuries that were sustained probably in the car crash. Even though you guys are hardy and stout gentlemen, looking at the body of your friend in this state is immediately troubling to you. And we need to make another 1-point stability test here.
Oh yeah.
So it just needs to be 2 or greater?
I know it's the same 4 or greater, but you would only lose 1 point if you don't.
6.
Wow, you guys are tough.
4.
4. Okay, so you both you initially feel that revulsion in your stomach, almost like you want to throw up when you first see the body, but you're able to quickly steel yourselves against it, and it doesn't have a lasting effect on you. But it is, and you see that her neck. I mean, she has a clear slice all the way across the front of her.
Like almost
her neck.
decapitation.
I'm glad neither of you threw up because I probably would have thrown up.
Right. So
I can handle a little bit of a.
Just use some accounting points and think
Yeah,
about
exactly.
numbers in your head.
Exactly. I got to use it somehow.
3.14.
So initially, you're able to see bruising on her wrists, just like you read in the report, and a number of small lacerations around the face and bruises. Hard to tell if the bruises were from the car accident or from something else, but certainly the smaller lacerations look like they were from glass in the windshield, but probably not this, as you said. So if you guys are willing to spend a little bit a point in some of the other things, maybe you found out about vegetation under fingernails.
Yeah,
you
we can
found
check
out
that.
about the black stone.
we can check
Those
that.
are things that you could try to find out a
Do
little more
the
information
geology
about.
for
Yeah, I
this
definitely
one.
want to do that for the stone.
Okay. So you would look at this with he would point out to, Dr. Winters would point out to you that, I found this and I'm not aware of this being part of any construction in automobiles, and it is not a rock that is in any way native to our area. But given your background, you would know that this is obsidian and that it is not native in any way to England.
Okay. That's found in the neck wound, right? Correct?
I believe that's right. Is that what's in the report, Verge?
Yeah, it was neck. I remember that black glass in the neck.
Yeah.
Can I take a piece with me?
So what about?
Terrence, can you figure out the under the fingernails?
Yeah. What about the vegetation
Stuff.
stuff? I mean, does it look like moss or something? I'm just trying to think of the dirt smell we had.
Yeah.
Mossy.
Yeah, it's not nearly enough to have created that smell, but if you had biology or outdoorsman or
Yeah, I'm trying
got the
to reason
forensics
my
and
way
all.
through it.
I have
Chemistry.
chemistry. I do have chemistry if that's what we need to use. I can
Yeah,
use
I don't have a chemistry.
it. Okay.
You know what I have, so nothing that'll
Can account
help.
for that.
Well, I think so.
Got that
Chemistry.
library.
So when you guys are generally looking at this with him and you're working through what you know, talking about the evidence, something that I'm not sure if it was in the report or if you just missed it, but Dr. Winters would point out to you that she also had a blue stain in her hair.
That's not on here.
Well, she does. So he points it out to you while you're examining the body, and if you're willing to use a point in chemistry, you would be able to figure out after a little bit of time that that's from a plant known as AFTS tinctoria, which is the basis of a pigment known in England as woad, W-O-A-D.
Oh, okay. I've heard of
It's
that.
kind of like
What
a
is it?
blue stain.
Isotis?
It's a Latin name, AFTS tinctoria.
Tinctoria, okay.
But I think the key is that it's the basis of a pigment that's known as woad. And at the same time as you're looking at this, you're able to identify the vegetation under her fingernails as a combination of oak bark and some type of epiphytic moss, which is just some type of moss. Epiphytic.
And I was curious too, when, just going back to the whole episode that we experienced that the mortician didn't, everything went away. The wind, the howling, and the smells, that's all gone now. So, okay. Nothing's lingering.
Yeah.
Is there any reason why there would be oak bark or moss underneath their fingernails?
You're asking Dr. Winters
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
I mean,
Which professional?
right.
opinion?
I mean, had she died simply in a car crash, unless she had done something beforehand, where she would have, but no, it doesn't make sense. And of course, these wounds are inconsistent with her having died in this crash. So, ultimately it's for the police to decide, but it seems as if someone was covering something up with this accident.
And tree hugger wasn't even a thing then. So,
How much do you know about the people of Postbridge?
About Postbridge?
Postbridge.
Well, Postbridge is an odd place. So,
That's putting it lightly.
and he can tell you the same thing that other people in town would tell you, that which is, it's a real small town, but Postbridge has a reputation of being a place where people from time to time just go out into the moors and don't come back or disappear, sometimes for a lengthy period of times. And so the people in Princeton look on it as a kind of an odd, perhaps dangerous place.
Now, what about the other fatal? There was one other fatal accident, right?
Yeah, it was a doctor. This is
Did this mortician examine that body? Are there any similarities?
Yes, I'm the only person in the area that would have done that. He said that was some time back, but I, as far as I could tell, that was an accident. That was an actual car accident. He lost control of the wheel.
So none of these extraneous wounds that wouldn't have been part of a car accident?
No, I think that was a case of him having lost control of his vehicle.
Okay.
There was nothing like this case.
Well then. I'm going to keep doing that because I think that handout is actually pretty cool. I like the look of it. It really gives us something to study.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what else to go off right now.
I mean, I think you've gotten most of what you can get from him.
I think we should head to the library and see if there was any way we can track to see what she was looking at there. So
That's the only other question I would have. Is there any other recent deaths in that other town? I just forgot the name. I got Princetown in
Well,
front of me.
there's people missing, like the
Postbridge.
Nathaniel Brand staff is missing.
Yeah.
There's no body.
But yeah, that's what I mean. Any other
I guess we
people
could-
circulating through the morgue, as it were.
Just
Got any fresh ones there, Doc?
Yeah.
No, I mean,
I thought about it when we first came in. You said there's a body that might be the professor.
Right, that was her.
Yeah,
Right.
and I figured that, but I didn't know if there were others around. Okay.
no.
right.
See, he says we've had nothing particularly unusual. Occasionally someone will die of natural causes of old age, but it's a small town, so even that doesn't happen very often. We have more folks here in Princeton that we're dealing with, but no, this was. But this was notably unusual to me and of interest, and I'm sure Detective Donnelly will be interested in these findings.
Definitely.
Well,
I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you for
sir.
letting us have a look around, and you've done a real good job here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your help. And so he actually is write some notes based on like what you told him about
Yeah.
the obsidian and some.
And I want to tell
businesses.
Donnelly anyway. I kind of want to rope him into the. In case we need to go back to Postbridge. I want a little more backup.
Good point.
But the library is on the way back.
Correct.
So-
Back in the main part of
I
town.
think we should stop by there
Yep.
before heading off.
Okay. And just for the people at home,
I can't wait. I have a 2 in library use. We're going into a library.
so the professor had a Princeton library card in her possession at her death, which I think was kind of the hook to get in here, if you will. So the library is along that main street in town that you can see on the map, and it is in a long kind of Georgian style building right off the road. From the outside, the stonework also presents a really drab setting against this wintry sky that's outside, and it looks just kind of unappealing from the outside. But as soon as you walk in, the picture totally changes. So you walk inside and the room immediately feels warm. There's actually a fireplace with a fire that's obviously well tended. It's not roaring, but it's a very nice fire there. There are a number of nice looking oak tables with books laid out on them. In the main, you come in up a couple of steps. There's a little kind of reception area and then kind of one big main reading room. There are, of course, probably other offices off of there, but it's basically kind of a big one-room library. You don't see anyone else there reading, other than a silver-haired woman, maybe in her late 40s, who's sitting at what must be the librarian's desk. She's got her hair pulled back up in a bun, and she is does not look up at you as she comes in. She appears very focused on the book that she's reading at the desk as you walk
We
in.
could find out what book she looked at previously.
Yeah. Is there I mean, for the scene, because I'm the book collector / thief / fencer. Is this one of those libraries that has the wooden ladder on the wheels that rides around?
Yeah, so it does not have a second story with a mezzanine, but it does have exactly that. It has essentially a half a staircase that you can go up, and that you can move along on wheels if you need to get to things on the higher shelves.
So there's almost certainly some print in here that I would want to put in my jacket for the way out. So that's my first thought is that I'm looking around. First off, for anything that local lore, legend, mythology kind of thing, because we're being told about the horned man, the hairy hands. We've experienced some odd phenomenon that apparently the mortician didn't experience. And I'm just going to kind of look urban legend kind of books. I'm just going to start looking around.
Okay. And
I don't want the attention of the librarian.
Right.
She's probably right on the edge of a shush.
Well, and so you
Always.
you notice the librarian look up at you, but just for a split second, almost as if she doesn't want to be seen acknowledging you.
Yeah.
She immediately looks back down to her book and continues to read.
Okay.
So you can probably wander
Cool.
without her
We
bothering.
can run interference for you.
All right. Sounds good.
I'm gonna meander over there to that bunned lady.
Bund lady.
Bunned lady.
Oh, she of the tight bun.
The shustress.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to introduce myself. It's like, hello, my name is Terrence. I'm here investigating the recent death of a friend and colleague. She had a library card for this library on her possession. Is there any way to get a record of what she looked at?
She looks up and she kind of sighs and she says, "Young man, she did not have a library card on her possession. She had a library card in her possession."
I love this lady
if you
already.
can use the bathroom.
She says, "But I'm sorry, I was lost in thought. What was it that you were asking?"
I wanted to see if there was a way to get a list of books
I was looking
that
for the
she
grammar
looked
police,
at.
but I apparently found them. Yeah.
A list of books at which she looked. Well, I probably could provide that, but this might be a rather private matter for her.
Well, she's no longer alive.
She's,
And we are working with Detective Donnelly in these investigations. There's mysterious circumstances surrounding her death, so we are trying to figure out what she was working on, so what she may have looked at.
okay. She sighs and she looks up at you and she looks back at her book. You can see her kind of decide that she's going to have to deal with you. And she closes her book.
What you're reading, by the way?
She's a book on the newest knitting techniques.
Oh.
So she says, "Well,
It's a counter.
I guess privacy won't really be a matter. It matters not if she was reading Harlequin romances, if she's passed into the next world now." And she says, and what was her name? What was the woman?
It's Professor Margaret Blackwood.
And you can see instantly that she knows who you're speaking of. So you're going to have to spend a point in library use if you want her to actually provide a list of...
I
guess.
have that. If you still want to, unless you want
I was gonna cry. I
come
thought
back
it was
all the way.
You're gonna have a lot of
because
opportunities to spend
you're
points in the
talking to
library.
her, so you spend that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, there will be a lot of opportunities
Yeah.
to spend points if you want to here. So
Oh, I'm in the library trying to find something that is useful for me to read or take, or both.
we'll have to figure out what book stealing skill is and whether you have a point in it or not.
Oh, I'm sure I do. It's probably a locksmith.
Yeah, so you guys suggested library
Oh,
use.
Filch. I have Filch.
Oh,
It's a general ability. I steal stuff.
awesome.
Done.
You suggested that you have library use, which is sufficient for her to be willing to provide the list of the books that she had not necessarily checked out from the library, but had checked out from the librarian to give to her so that she could have them at the tables to
Right.
study. And in conversing with her, the librarian, Elizabeth Updike, will tell you that the professor did most of her, and she actually has a name tag on her desk, so you would see Ms. Elizabeth Updike, I guess it would be Miss back then.
Keep saying
So
it.
there's
I'm going to not look.
So there's no
What are you not looking at?
I'm laughing. So.
Am I doing something silly?
No, her name, Kurt.
Elizabeth Updike? Oh.
How many times have you read this before? We're 12. Come on.
I was thinking about the author, John Updike. I didn't think about lesbians.
We're friendly on this show. Definitely friendly.
So she brings you a list of books that includes Devon and Exeter Institution, Proceedings of the Devonshire Archaeological Society, The Old Straight Track, and several other books.
I'm gonna worry about writing that down.
Depending
my
on
favorite series.
And several other books.
Well, she's got 8 or 10 books on the list. So as you go through them, I can tell you more about them depending on how many points you want. Want to spend. There's you can tell just from an initial flip that the first one I mentioned, Devon and Exeter Institution, has something to do with meteorological, so weather phenomena. The Archaeological Society appears to be records, ancient records of some kind. The Old Straight Tract, you're not sure without looking at it, but it looks like it may have something to do with the occult or legends of some kind. There's some books on anthropology, some on art, history, and others. So depending on how long you want to spend there and how much you want to look at things, you may or may not be able to learn more about what she was studying.
Do you want to go through what I was doing? Do I find anything worthwhile?
In the collection?
No, throughout the library itself. I mean, I know for things. So again, it's twofold. One is I'm looking for urban legend kind of stuff, but secondarily, I'm looking for a binding that just jumps out at me that I know is going to be a worthwhile book to stuff into my jacket before I leave.
For you to sell for a profit?
Yeah, later on. Yeah.
Sure. You want to roll for it?
Sure. Now, I have Filch, and I have 6 points in that, so I'm going to be successful. But you have
so you're going to be able to steal it. So it's just a matter of what you find.
Yeah.
This is a small town library, but I imagine that you could find something that if it is not valuable, you could sell it as being valuable.
Yeah, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for specifically something. The idea is it's more valuable than what someone would pay for it in a bookstore. It's an earlier print of something, something like that,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
And because a library might have that. Now, sure, it may be well used because it's in a library. However, it's valuable just by virtue of what it is.
Right. You can certainly find something that would make Sherman happy.
Okay. And am I able to find anything referencing what I was talking about, local legends, urban myths, the kind of thing that I'm looking for a book that might reference something that we've experienced to explain it.
Yeah. So actually, several of them would be on this list of books that she.
Okay.
So if you ask, the librarian is willing to bring the books out to you and let you kind of look at them, and so you're looking specifically for kind of folklore, myth, and Professor Blackwood had several books concerning Dartmoor's local myths. Based on what she was studying, she seemed to have been paying particular attention to the old Crockern legend, which you've already heard a little bit about from William.
And that's the horned man.
Yeah, he's a spirit appearing as a horned figure and associated with omens of death. Based on kind of flipping through what Margaret was looking at, he was said to roam the area near Wistman's Woods, which some say was once a druid grove. This would also be somewhat consistent with what you found at the church and all the carvings.
So all the stuff we found at the church is very similar to what we would discover here.
Right, and also
we heard about the Green Man too.
Yeah,
that was the
part of
church.
That was part of the druid stuff. Okay.
Part of the architecture.
Now, are we finding references? And really, for me, it's all collaboration, corroboration.
Right. So this would be consistent with what you've heard because these books also include mentions of the black spectral hounds. They're similar in description to something called the Yorkshire Barghast, but they're known locally in these books as Yeth hounds, which is what William had called them.
Yes, we knew that.
What about hairy hands? That might be a little newer because it's automobile related.
Right. Yeah. There's nothing there. Other thing that might be close would, for the professor, been looking at a book of a copy of Alfred Watkins' The Old Straight Track, which describes the existence of ley lines within the British landscape. There are actually notes on paper that were slipped into the book in Professor Blackwood's own hand that were made lightly in pencil that suggest a series of ley lines, as well as several medieval beacons existing in the local area. Some of the theories in there suggest that their placement is significant, magically powerful, and Margaret's notes at the end are written in hand that says, "But would it be to keep something in or keep something out?"
All right.
So if you're looking specifically for kind of a cult or local legend, those would be the books that she had looked at.
Well, I mean, I was looking for something to explain what was happening, not to make it more mysterious and disturbing. So that sucks.
Yeah, I'd like to look into something that would be. I know we have the whole dismiss or call horned man thing, but I want something a little bit more definitive on how to control or expel this person.
So, yeah, I don't think beyond what you found in the ancient Latin text. I think that's the most you're probably going to get on that. There's nothing that specific about him in here.
Gotcha. Is there anything about rituals with that whole the blue dyed plan or anything like that listed, or black obsidian?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think in these books. I'll double check as we go through here, but I don't think so. They're, let me see. So let's see. For the occult, so Joe, did you have occult or anthropology or anything?
I have Cthulhu Mythos.
I can need that.
Not anthropology,
I have
not
occult.
occult, no.
Okay.
I have a cult.
I have a cult.
Okay, so one of you guys needs to spend a point on that for what we just talked about.
I don't have. Well, I don't
Or
have any more
anthropology.
points,
I guess I'm burning.
If you have it.
Yeah, I got one more point left to burn.
That's okay. Physics, anyone?
I
Or
have
weather?
physics as well.
So one of the books, and you're kind of moving through here, things is on, like I said, it's on weather phenomena, and there's the book is focused on weather phenomena in 1911, which seems very specific for Professor Blackwood, who've been looking at. It contains a record of the time during which there were really severe thunderstorms in the area, and there were over 700 flashes of lightning recorded within an hour, appearing to strike in the same point over nearby Crocontour. The intensity was compared to the Great Thunderstorm of 1638, which legend attributes to the devil. The paper noted other strange weather patterns in the area recorded at semi-regular intervals.
What's the Crocontour thing? What's that?
It's a hill outside of town, like out in the moors.
Okay.
Were they in the same seasons when these weather events happen? Like, is it springtime every year, or is it the current time? Honestly,
Yeah, no,
I know it's unseasonably cold right now, but we are not in the winter either, or late
No,
winter.
we are. We're in like
Late-
mid-January.
I thought it was
Yeah,
late. All right.
yeah,
Either way,
we're in January, I believe, but it's much, much, much colder than it
Right.
should be.
And these weather events, did they happen at
They're
similar
different times,
Okay.
but for example, 1911 is. Remember, I think we had seen some point that there's
there
reference
was
to 25-year intervals.
repeat,
We're
yeah.
about right at.
And this
we're
would be
like
25.
36.
Yeah, it's 1935 or 36.
1935.
Yeah.
Right, so we're nearing a 25-year from then.
Okay.
I imagine if you did the back to 1638, it would come out pretty close.
Okay.
I think the idea is that there's, strong and unusual weather patterns coming through at a semi-regular intervals here.
Well, we've definitely seen irregular weather patterns already.
Right. Right, and I didn't emphasize again this session, but like even though the true blizzard had stopped, it is like painfully cold when you guys are outside. I mean, you're in multiple layers of clothes.
Yeah.
You can barely function outside. It's so cold.
So when the weather changes, it's more severe, not like super nice for that time of year.
Correct.
It's not like in
Yeah, lightning
January it's
storms.
70 degrees.
Right.
Okay. All right. Wow. And during those times, is there anything else of note? I mean, yes, we're looking at weather, but like, is it like more deaths at that period in time?
So as you're looking through this, you're going to find if you're spending the time, a lot of overlap. So
Yeah.
someone have a history and want to look at some of the more general history books.
I used the history point I had, but I still have the 2 library use if it makes a difference.
Okay.
I have history if I need it.
Do you want to use a history point?
If I got to, I'll use it.
Go for it.
So the professor had been looking at several books that had references to 15th and 16th century witchcraft, including witchcraft trials in the local area. It takes you guys a while to kind of cross-reference the different books and the references, but you discover that 3 of the trials concerned women and men from Postbridge accused of performing heathen rites. Of those accused, only one actually spoke out in her own defense, claiming that the actions were for the greater good.
The greater good.
And that the trials occurred approximately 25 years apart from each other.
Okay.
Oh, so each three people were 25 years apart. They weren't all together in one group. What you're talking about?
Which
I'm not clear. I mean, I think it could be one group or it could be. I think
Interesting.
it's not clear from the way it's written, but 3 of the trials concerning young. I think it could have been all at once.
Okay.
Yeah.
nothing else. Any other things happening in the same time periods? Like I was saying, more people dying, a population growth, anything that coincides.
Or is there anything like a benefit to the town after this 25?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so
well,
when
the crops are better or something
yeah, the
like that.
25-year thing happens, and all of a sudden the
Right.
crops are better.
Right. No, I don't think that you would find any tangible, positive reaction or during the time period. So we looked at the weather.
Is there anything that could be? Is there any type of history listed where we might get like ancestral knowledge of like who Father Blakeney is related to all the way back these times?
Yeah.
Is his family always pastors or things like that, or what?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's nothing in here about Father Blakely specifically that she was looking at. But if you're continuing kind of looking not just at history, but like archaeology.
I get that for sure.
I was going to say, too, you mentioned Father Blakely. What about the church in general? Right?
Right, with the weird, it's like a mix of certain architectures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, so one of the volumes on the Devonshire Archaeology Society records, and this is looking way back now, it records a number of Bronze Age settlements. So this is way back.
But there were stones in the church that seemed like they'd be that old as well.
Right. So there's information in here about a number of Bronze Age settlements in the Princeton and Post Bridge areas. And interestingly, several of these areas were really rich in artifacts and goods that are not usually found in sites of the period. It says here, it's as if the inhabitants had just disappeared, leaving all of their worldly goods behind. So there's records of these sites that had like tons of material goods, but did not have skeletal remains or evidence of.
Wow.
But this is in the way past.
Right.
There's also an art book if anyone's interested in art or.
I got
anything
art
like
history.
that. And you got it all covered.
Yeah.
It does.
So
He's the well-rounded.
I'm the rich Dilto. I got
doesn't-
time to read shit.
He has no idea how to
He's
steal
got
a
all
book,
the
though.
academic abilities.
Yeah. And when it comes to accounting, he sucks.
Yeah, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. I figured
Not a
Dad was going
numbers
to hook me
guy.
up with the money.
Yeah.
So interestingly, the professor had a book of poetry among these library books, which seems odd at first.
It was all dirty limericks.
Yeah.
There once was a man from Nantucket.
Exactly.
One particularly dreary piece of verse stands out to you as you're kind of flipping through there. It describes a stunted oak woodland. And the only way you're going to learn more about it actually is by asking Miss Updike.
Okay.
But since we're willing to spend a point on that, she can tell you that poem is actually describing Wistman's Wood, which is a local grove standing near Post Bridge, as you already know. She also tells you that sometimes and here she kind of lights up a little bit. It's almost like talking about maybe gossip, like is kind of more fun for her. But she says there's a lot of tales associated with Wistman's Woods, and that it was once, it's often been said that it was once a druid's grove. And she kind of gets this little sly look to her eye, and she says, sometimes they say that you can see a procession, people clad all in white, crossing across the moors into the woods.
Ooh.
She says, and she just has this like little gleam, something exciting that wouldn't happen around town usually. So
Yeah, probably happened like a week ago.
About a week ago.
Yeah, she's kind of creepy. So, I think
But that updo.
Sure. I think Sherman is pretty much done with the library. I hate to say that, but he's the way I'm going to play this. He's just being creeped out. I was going here. I was so excited to get into the library because I know how to find crap in books, and it was going to be easy to find stuff that said, "Yeah, there's weird stuff going on, but here's what caused it."
right.
And all we're finding out is no, there's weird stuff, and there's other weird stuff. And there's other weird stuff.
Right.
Oh, and this weird stuff goes back 1,000 years too. So, I'm ready to go.
He's being creeped out.
Do they
by
have
the Updike.
lollipops on the counter?
she does not.
Damn it!
She
So
does
this
not.
place is horrible. It's not a good library at all.
So Sherman is gonna
Yeah, I'm kind
Go
of.
off to the corner.
I'm checking out.
Yeah.
I grabbed the one book that looked reasonable. It's in my jacket, and with the many layers of clothing, that's easy enough. But yeah, I'm just going to kind of hang out near the exit, kind of thumb through a periodical or something.
And there's a couple more books that you guys haven't looked at if you want to.
I definitely want to check it all.
And keep going. All right. So there is a book. I'm going to have kind of a chemistry or science type.
I have chemistry.
All right. I can tell you chemistry and or medicine will be helpful for the last ones that we have. There's an article in one of the books mentioning the death of a young boy in 1883. The body was found in Dartmoor, had been badly damaged as if by some type of acid.
Now, I'm no math guy, although I do have accounting. Is that a 25-year interval going back? Is it relevant? Because if we're going to hear something that has a date on it, I've got to think, is it 25-year?
It's pretty close.
Yeah, okay.
I have to do the exact math. It's pretty close because that'd be 08.
I'm not spending my point in accounting for that.
So and his body, and it had a sulfurous odor, so it was like it had been damaged by acid and smelled like sulfur. The only acid that you can think of that it might kind of match the description that you're reading about is maybe sulfuric acid. Right. And while that can certainly cause death, it's too weak to cause the level of burns that were described on this body. No clear cause of death was discovered, or at least listed in the book that you read, but several locals at the time connected it to the legend of the Yeth Hounds and claimed that the Black Hounds had caused it.
Okay.
Yeah, and we were under the impression too that those are hellhounds, hell's sulfur.
Right,
Yeah.
And then lastly, there's a book, or her research had several mentions of missing persons who later turned up. So just like you had heard, I think Dr. Winters told you sometimes people go out into the moors and then come back.
Yeah.
And here are tales of people who disappeared and then later came back, evidencing signs of like extreme psychological shock. The three cases were particularly interesting in 1856, 1830, and 1781. So again, roughly the same period. Yeah. And they exhibited a regular and peculiar pattern. When found, these people, before they slipped off into a catatonic state, they would often be heard repeating over and over the phrase, "Release me, release me." And in every case, within several days of being found, the particular person died of heart failure.
Ooh.
Wow.
Okay.
So this is the type of stuff that the professor was investigating at the library.
I'm looking at Britain Weekly. That's
You're
right.
looking at what?
I'm looking at Britain Weekly, some periodical thing.
I'm pretty good with ending what we've got here. I don't know where else to go from there.
Yeah, I'd like to definitely give some information to Detective Donnelly, though, the autopsy report and maybe some information we pulled here. It kind of points to the, Father Blakeney and his group of ne'er-do-wells. Which who knows who those are in the town besides possibly the bartender.
Or the drunk.
Well, I don't think he's involved. I don't know if he's involved.
But yeah, but he knew enough to be able to babble about stuff.
Yeah, they kind of had to hush him up there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I say we give Donnelly all this information and go home.
Go back to Postbridge.
Well, we're still in
Maybe Miss Updike wants to go on a cruise.
We go to the police station. Donnelly, here you go. Here's what we found out. Looks like she was murdered, this and that, blah, blah, blah. What are you going to do about it?
And then we can go to London and live our lives happily forever outside of this creepy stuff.
Right. So, I mean,
a police station, yeah. Okay.
yeah, so he, Donnelly respects and is kind to you all, and he had actually already gotten notice of the preliminary autopsy. So, he says, yes, he's like, we're trying to figure out what's happening here. Obviously something is not quite kosher here. Needs to be looked into. Manpower's light. It's hard to get people in Postbridge to talk to us. So, any information you can gather or provide, we'd certainly be happy.
Are you saying you're going to deputize us?
I was going to say, if something comes of it, even be happy to compensate you for your help.
Now, they're the only people who by law, have jurisdiction over Postbridge.
That's right. And they have jurisdiction over all the little towns out in this part of the moors. So
like,
while this is weird,
office,
there's also a spate of robberies going on, 20 miles to the west. And,
right.
there's this is one blip on their radar.
People stealing books from the
What else did
library.
we find at the? What else was in the safe at the church? Do you guys remember besides like the two books, like the journal and then the testamentary?
But there, yeah,
there
there
any
was
tools,
the
like obsidian tools or
the
anything?
priest's like diary kind of thing too.
Yeah, there's like some weird stuff with that.
where he had like the sermons, but then he was writing some weird crap in there as well, and then the testamentum thingy.
Vigilant,
Yeah, the priest
But I don't
knows.
think there was anything else of note in there.
Okay.
There was, like,
Between the desk
chalice,
and the safe, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But no, at this point, Terrence, he's getting very upset because there's all this weird stuff going on, and
Kurt.
while he was, upset that she had died in an accident, now it's turned out that she's been murdered,
Right.
and he really wants to get to the bottom of this. Because it's not the first friend and colleague he's had that's been killed, and he's not going to just let it lie. So he's going to talk to these guys, and he's like, if he will give us some sort of deputization or authority, I say we go back to Post Bridge and kick ass and take names, and maybe not,
I want to find out.
in that order.
I want to
Give
find
it a
out who
warrant.
murdered her and get the mystery out
Yeah,
of
let's
this.
get the warrant
'cause-
for like the priest or
Yeah.
something,
Right.
And then what's your normal procedure, Detective Donnelly, on something like this? Obviously, this seems like it's murder.
Right. Well, it certainly looks that way. I'm not sure that we have any evidence at all to arrest a particular individual at this point. We need to.
Okay, you found the journal at in the priest's safe.
We
That
did.
is-
He did.
So obviously, yeah, but obviously, right. So you have to believe us on that, right? So that's all fingers point to him right now.
But we haven't talked to him. But if we have some authority given to us, even
We
temporarily,
haven't even seen him.
We think it might have been the guy that walked off.
Yeah.
But we don't know, right?
Right.
It's kind of like the husband of the innkeeper. We haven't seen him either.
Right.
James.
There's a good chance
James.
he's,
Yeah. And since you guys were asking about the notes, remember he had a bunch of notes from sermons and things, but there was also a lot of writing on Christian theology related to sacrifice.
Right. And there was a reference to Green Man in his stuff too, wasn't there?
Yeah, and there was references to sacrifice, and some of them were even implying that you might need a literal human sacrifice. But
It's
for
strange
what?
though, but because the old Crockhorn is not the Green Man. Those are different. Those are two different things.
yeah.
Because Green Man is usually a peaceful thing, like a good thing.
Right.
Closely related to spring and
Yeah,
growth.
yeah.
Growth and rebirth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more druidic than it is monsterific.
Very more pagan than satanic.
Yeah, they said. I think William had told you that old Crockhorn was like also called the Horn Man, is an evil spirit. They say sacrifice was made to it back in the Civil War. Hung several fools who got caught for witchcraft.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like the Green Man.
I'm very
Yeah.
up for going back to Post Bridge and finding out what happened.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Probably should wrap up there for this session, and we can pick it up
Sounds
there
reasonable.
next time. How's that sound?
Cool. That
Let's
sounds
make
good to
sure
me.
we chew all the bubble gum in between sessions, so next time we can just kick ass.
I get it. So, and that we can just say, bye, everybody.
The preceding podcast was brought to you by One Joe Young. You can find us online at adventuresfromtheshed.com.